It's Pride. So many people already think I'm indoctrinating the youth. Well, right now it's June, so you kind of am, yeah.
I am just begging LGBT people to be normal on the internet, but that's too much to ask these days, I guess. At least for some.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Welcome back to another bonus video, guys, where I subject myself to the torture that is TikTok and react to some of the brain-dead woke videos on there that I see from the perspective of a moderate gay guy who hasn't quite lost his mind just yet. Up first, this non-binary teacher just admitted to indoctrinating kids. Let's take a listen to what they/them had to say.
It's Pride. So many people already think I'm indoctrinating the youth. Well, right now it's June, so you kind of am, yeah.
Oh?
I'm bringing Blues Clues Pride. I am bringing queer portraits. We are learning about the pride flag. We are reading the books, especially the banned ones. We are learning about queer icons. And on top of all of that, I am teaching how to create a social media post for when they become, those people. But it's the end of the year, and it is important that we continue our learning, continue our understanding, and that is what we are doing here in 5th grade. The biggest things I want them to take away is this quote from Miss Major Griffin Gracie. We're all part of one another. I would want people to understand who we are as human beings. I want us to look at the similarities more than the differences. If only more people could do that. Links to resources are in my bio, so check it out. Ebooks, slides, lessons, whatever you need to talk about pride in your classroom. Yes, and happy Pride from this trans educator. Well,
I mean, people like this are the problem in the LGBT community. The ones who see support for normal gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans people's rights going down and think, yeah, you know what I should do? I should intentionally antagonize people and confirm that I am exactly what people are worried about, which is ideology, not acceptance, not tolerance, not kindness, but ideology, radical gender ideology being taught to very young children who can't really understand the concepts, partly because some of them are incoherent at their core anyways and are being presented in a very slanted and biased manner. And look, you're not a bigot if you wouldn't want your teacher to be taught by this person. I'm gay myself, and if this was my child's teacher, they would be getting switched after a single day. The first time I heard any of this, the first time I saw that ugly design hate crime monstrosity of a flag that is way too ugly to have actually been designed by a gay person. The first time I see any of that, the first time I hear them start talking about gender queer pronouns in the classroom or anything, I'm out. I want someone to teach my kid how to read, teach my kid how to do math, teach my kid to be kind, how to get along with other kids. I do not need you pushing on an ideology onto anyone. And it's just really inappropriate and really unfortunate. Now, to be clear, 5th grade is a little young, then you're talking about 10 or 11-year-olds, but I think it's appropriate that maybe a couple of years after that, when kids are starting to go through puberty, that they do learn that gay people exist and that there are different sexualities as part of a sex education course. I don't think that's controversial. They should also be taught to treat everyone with kindness, not to discriminate or bully people because of who they are, or what their family looks like, or how they identify. But what we're dealing with here goes far, far beyond any of that. I mean, I looked into the resources that this non-binary identifying teacher offers, and not only are they very ideological and extreme, some of them are also suspicious. Side note, we especially read the banned books. Well, first off, banned books is a little bit of a misnomer, but the books that have been removed from school libraries, some of them are being removed for good reason because they have extremely graphic or adult content. Now, some of the challenges I think definitely go too far, but I'd be very curious for this educator to let us know exactly which books they're pushing on 5th graders, because that might be a problem depending on which titles we're talking about. But the resources that this person is putting out for other educators to hopefully adopt and use to also indoctrinate in their own admission students in the classroom are quite something, as you will see. For example, it includes lessons about genderqueer and non-binary identities and all these other ideological things that are not actual immutable characteristics or demographic traits, and could very well confuse children who don't have a fully formed sense of their own identity, and particularly with girls, maybe starting to enter the uncomfortable age of puberty where it's normal to feel all sorts of discomfort with your body and with how you present, but it doesn't mean you're actually non-binary or something else, but they could mistakenly get that idea from this kind of lesson plan that this teacher openly encourages people to use. There's also a pronoun form that this teacher gives to all students and recommends that be given out to students that has some interesting details. So this asks students, what name would you like to be called? Can I use this name in front of other students? Can I use this name when I contact caregivers? And may I use this name with other teachers, including substitutes? It asks the same thing for pronouns. So what this suggests is that if a child requests, this teacher will keep secrets from the parents and call the student a different name or different pronouns and not tell the parent. That is unacceptable. That is wildly inappropriate for a teacher to do. Because listen, if your child is having some sort of identity crisis that can correspond with serious mental health issues, that's something a parent needs to know about, not something a teacher should be covering up and keeping from parents and keeping secrets with kids. That's a massive red flag. I'm amazed that people like this continue to be gainfully employed as educators. I certainly wouldn't want that at my child's school, but at the very least, it would be great if they could stop posting this stuff on the internet and actively riling everyone up and confirming their worst suspicions. What do you think? Let me know in the comments and hit that like button while you're at it. And we'll get into another really, really eye-roll inducing TikTok after this. Guys, I've had threats sent to my home before, so I understand better than anyone how important it is to get your personal information off the internet. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. If you've ever wondered how spammers get your phone number or why your email inbox is flooded with spam, well, here's why. There are companies called data brokers that sell your data. They do it without your consent, and they make millions selling it to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. And while they're legally required to move your information if you ask, they make the process confusing and hard on purpose. That's why I recommend today's sponsor, Aura, to my family and friends. They take care of the hard part, automatically removing your information from all of these sites and keeping it off. I use Aura to get my address taken off the internet so it's harder for haters to harass me and to decrease the endless robocalls and spam emails. And you can too. Plus, if anything does happen, Aura includes $5 million in identity theft insurance protection, and they have US fraud experts ready to help 24/7. Try Aura for 14 days for free at aura.com/Polumbo. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being sold. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Okay, up next, really, nothing is ever good enough for some of these people. Take a listen to this TikTok complaining that a separate category for trans athletes would be even worse than banning them from participating in their preferred gender identity. Take a listen.
California just created a third category for trans individuals in regards to sports, which for some reason pisses me off a lot more than just straight up not allowing trans people to compete. Both are bad, but this feels worse. I don't think any of us want a third category because we're not like some weird subsect of people. If I'm a trans woman, I'm a woman. If a man is a trans man, they're a man. It's not that complicated. Making some third category just ostracizes a group of people even more than they already are. This is stupid. This is unbelievably stupid. Do you know how many trans people compete yearly in sports across the country? Not that many. Whatever the number you're thinking of, it's 50% less than that, probably more.
So the first problem with this TikTok is that it is, like so many of the videos that get a lot of traction on that website, factually flawed. The third category thing is a reference to one specific temporary change made in one particular athletic competition related to a controversy, but the state of California is not overall creating a third category for transgender athletes in sports. That's not true. That's not a thing. Hasn't been reported. And it actually is the current state policy of the state of California that student athletes can compete in whatever sports sex with which they identify, not according to their biology. The Trump administration is trying to get them to change that, but there hasn't in fact been this creation of a third category. So the whole thing is just incorrect, but more than that, it's really telling that nothing is good enough for some of these activist types, because the idea of a third type of competition, to me, that it has some practical issues because there's probably not enough athletes who are transgender in most sports to field teams or have leagues or anything like that. But in theory, at least, it seems like a reasonable compromise that lets people, compete according to their identity, but doesn't erase biology or infringe on other people's right to fairness and safety in athletic competitions. But some of these activist types, they're just not happy with that, and that is very clear. They're not looking for reasonable compromises or sensible solutions. They're looking for unmitigated acceptance and bending the knee to their radical ideology that frankly denies reality. When a person like this says, trans women are women, so they should be allowed to compete in the women's sports, they're just ignoring the fact that biological sex exists and is meaningful. And I don't know how you reason with somebody in the grips of that level of delusion, but it certainly shouldn't be accommodated or ingrained into policies. Policies should be based on reality and truth, and they should absolutely be structured with kindness and empathy and compassion for people who are different, but not at the expense of safety or fairness, and not at the expense of reality itself. And if people like this aren't even willing to talk about common sense compromises, then in a sense I agree. Maybe they should just be banned. And apparently some people like this actually think that's better than a compromise solution, which is really quite something. Up next, this woke aunt decided to mock her nephews and her family on the internet because their parents are MAGA. Let's take a listen.
My MAGA sister is in town and with her 4 boys, and yesterday we went to the Museum of Nature and Science, and as we're walking around through the exhibits, I'm asking her boys oh, which of these animals would you guys be if you could be one? And every single time, without fail, the oldest one, who's 8 years old, only 8, goes, I'd be that one because he's the biggest and the strongest. And then his younger brothers are oh, I'd be that one too. And it made me so sad because they're missing this crucial element of curiosity and playfulness and creativity, and they're not looking oh, which one do I like the most? Which one is the coolest looking? Which one's the most unique? They're just looking that one's the biggest and that one's the strongest. I want to be him.
I love how this woman is just scandalized by little boys being little boys. This is my shocked face, that you took little boys to a museum and they weren't exactly riveted by it, and they thought the coolest animals were the biggest and the strongest. In other news, water is wet. This is typical. And I understand that a lot of these types have convinced themselves that gender is just a social construct, but it is not. And children often remind us of that in pretty funny ways. And it's just quite something to see her attribute this incredibly normal behavior as if it's somehow sinister or bad, and attribute it, as you'll hear, to the fact that the parents are MAGA. But again, it really doesn't have anything to do with it. This is an experience, and this is how kids can come out, no matter if their parents are Democrats or not. It's just little boys being little boys. Not to say they're all like that. No, there's no absolute rules in these kinds of things, but trends and patterns among the biological sexes do exist, and denial of that might show up in your TikTok algorithm, but I'm not surprised that it's not matching your expectations out in the real world.
And that's so sad because also they're being taught you have to be the biggest and the strongest. That's the best. And also it's sad because obviously so clearly these are learned traits. These are learned pathways, right, that MAGA have, being the biggest, being the strongest, white people are the best, men are the best,
What? How did we get white people involved in this? What? She just made it a race thing when nothing she's described has anything to do with race. And I'm sorry, love, I'll hold your hand when I say this. These aren't learned behaviors, and this isn't a MAGA thing. This is just reality and how kids are. You're going to have to cope and adapt and stop convincing yourself that this is all some form of political indoctrination. It isn't.
They're learned things, these little boys copying their older brother, and the older brother learned it from the dad, and my sister. She's also the worst. But It's just so sad to me. I don't know. It like broke my heart a little bit. I was like, you guys don't have to be the biggest and the strongest. You can be the one that you really like being. I don't know. It just made me sad.
Now, what makes me sad is the fact that some people's brains are so broken by TikTok and progressive ideology that they see MAGA indoctrination simply when they encounter reality in the wild. And what actually makes me more sad than this is that this woman decided to go on the internet, and this video went viral, and just like drag her family, criticize her sister and her brother-in-law publicly when they didn't do anything wrong or do anything to her. Even then, it's probably best to handle your disputes privately rather than go bash them on the internet. But they did absolutely nothing wrong, and you're dragging your family on the internet. I think there's maybe some specific context where it might make sense to speak publicly about personal issues, but this is not one of them, and you just come off as very judgmental, totally out of touch, and then it's like throwing your family under the bus when, from the story you've told, your slant on it, they've done absolutely nothing wrong other than be, politics aside, normal people raising normal little boys. I'm sorry that's a radical or strange concept to you, but the problem is you, okay? Y'all, that one is really quite something. Up next, this man-hating TikTok is a new level of nasty.
Stop decentering men and start centering your hatred for them. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to think, how can I ruin a man's day? How can I gaslight, manipulate, disadvantage a man in my life? Bonus points if they are happy, if they are financially stable, they're really at a good place in their life. How can I center my day to derail that man from his goals and his dreams and going to bed with a smile on his face?
So, she seems normal and stable. I mean, this video has over 1.6 million views and nearly 500,000 likes. And look, I definitely think it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I don't think it's meant literally, but still, there is this kind of really acerbic and divisive commentary in the gender wars. You'll see sometimes commentary like this about women from the red pill types where they're just insulting and demeaning and generalizing and encouraging antagonism towards half the freaking population. And when I see this in either direction, even if it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, it's not entirely tongue-in-cheek. And the comments are full of people who are somewhat ironically, but somewhat unironically embracing at least part of this vibe. And it's just toxic. I mean, it's not good for us to hate each other and to divide us up like this. And look, I just think this kind of thing sends the absolute wrong message to people and is a good recipe for how to end up miserable and alone. But then again, that could be said about most of the videos I encounter on TikTok these days. What do you guys think? Which one of these did you find the most deranged? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go. And with that, we'll talk again real soon.